Escape to the metaverse. Better act like you know. Yeah. You are now tuned into the Matthew Rizzle show. Yeah. Escape to the metaverse. Better act like you know. Yeah. You are now tuned into the Matthew Rizzle show. Yeah. Escape to the metaverse. Better act like you know. Yeah. You are now tuned into the Matthew Rizzle show. Yeah. Escape to the metaverse. Better act like you know. You are now tuned into the Matthew Rizzle show. Yeah.
Hey everybody, before this week's show, just want to deliver a quick message from this month's sponsor, Cryptomotors. On July 29th, Cryptomotors, the world's first digital automaker powered by the Ethereum network, will launch the Gen 1 Neon Roadster drop, which includes 150 unique NFT production series cars with 5 original striking colors. The last launch sold out in minutes, so make sure you are quick to secure a Neon Roadster of your own. They will be available for purchase on OpenSea and distributed in 3 batches. Batch number 1 launches July 29th at 11:30 a.m. Eastern. Batch number 2 launches the next day on July 30th, 11:30 a.m. Eastern. And batch number 3 launches July 31st at 11:30 a.m. Eastern. Be on the lookout for ultra-rare hidden units that are virtual racer Neon Roadster models featuring a unique design, color, and other trait attributes. More details about the drop, available units, hidden units, and colors can also be found on Cryptomotors' Medium page. And you can also follow the drop and join the Cryptomotors community via Discord. Look out for those links in the show notes, and please enjoy today's episode. Okay, Snowfro, welcome back to the Matthew and Rizzle show.
Thanks for having me back, guys.
So excited to have you back. It feels like the whole world's changed about 3 or 4 different times since we last spoke. Art Blocks has blown the F up. But can you walk us from where we were the last time we chatted up until now, all the progress, all the change, all the insanity for Art Blocks and the space at large? I'm just curious to hear your take on how everything's changed so far.
Man, when did we talk? Was it January? I mean, it really literally feels like
it's trillion crypto years ago.
It's such a funny thing. We talk about how crypto years are so fast, and it's become such a meme, I guess, in our conversation. But it's so true too. It's really hard to put it into words. There's no other experience I've ever had in my life that just moves so fast. I feel like I am now 80% more gray hairs on my face just as a result of the last 5 months of crypto. And it's I think last time we talked,
dude, you got the snapback. This was pre-celebrity invasion. Honestly, I'm pretty sure pre major auction houses entering the space, and now I feel like you're sort of getting the snapback of all the money grabs and junk NFTs, and all of a sudden the attention's turning towards really actually interesting, innovative, projects that are utilizing the tech in interesting ways. And all of a sudden Snowfro's on top of the world. Hell yeah, dude, we were here from the beginning.
Yeah. And y'all were so kind to even let me talk to y'all early on. The validation is pretty surreal and incredible. It's terrifying to a degree too, just because it has just escalated to a point where, I'm on calls, maybe 7 or 8 calls a day at this point, and no complaints. They're all really awesome opportunities, really fun stuff that's coming our way. It's really happening really quickly. And, but yeah, I mean, I guess, so if we talked in January, I think in January, we probably, besides the Chromie Squiggle, which kind of has its own weird life, we had probably minted a couple thousand NFTs. I think it was probably right before the Ringers drop, if it was January, which I think the Ringers drop was kind of our a major milestone for Art Blocks in terms of giving people an understanding of the variety that you can get from algorithmic art. We have since minted 48,000 NFTs in the last 7 months. along with deployed about 101 art projects. 100, I think we're on 107, but I don't think they're all deployed. So I think we've deployed 101 art projects, and grown our community from, like a really beautiful 500 or so people in Discord to, I think we're at, about to hit 7,000. And it's surreal. It's something where sometimes I'm sleeping and I have these weird nightmares where I wake up and it's like I never launched Art Blocks and it was just this crazy idea and it just stayed a crazy idea, and I see somebody else had done it, and it's a weird way to wake up, because it happens kind of regularly. Like I feel like my whole life I spend coming up with entrepreneurial kind of endeavors and ideas, and some of them work out and some of them don't. I mean, that's part of being an entrepreneur. And my biggest weird nightmare is this one where I wake up and I'm like, oh shit, somebody did it, and I missed the boat. And so I don't know if that's even further validation or if that's just like insane paranoia on my part. But yeah, we've come a long way in the last few months. So yeah, we have a team now. There's 6 of us, like beautiful people that I'm very, very lucky to work with every day. Maybe growing that team here pretty soon. And yeah, I mean, the community response has just been insane. And I'm curious kind of how y'all see it from your side. I mean, we've all kind of been in the crypto space for such a long time, and we see these projects come and go, here and there. And I do feel like we stand out a little bit from kind of the everyday stuff, but it is still crypto and it's still, madness. So yeah, I'm always kind of curious what it looks like from the outside.
Dude, I can only speak for myself, man, but I mean, enough people are familiar with my like takes on like the money grabs and like the low effort stuff that honestly, like I think a lot of like some of the low effort stuff is like cute and have accumulated something anyway. Yeah. But I feel like the people who are here, like a lot of us who have been here for so long, man, it's so gratifying to see someone like yourself, like who have really pushed the boundaries of like innovation and like art and doing interesting stuff with the technology, like succeed, in a big way and in a way that has also rewarded a lot of artists, getting their name out there. And, a lot of them have had successful drops, and it's cool to see like the appreciation of what you're doing, like really gain some traction, like serious nerd clout going on that was like going viral. And it's great, dude. It's like beautiful to see. I feel like we've been waiting for something like that.
Viral nerd clout. That's kind of a tongue twister. I love that person. I feel viral like
nerd clout. Yeah, that's going to have to weasel its way into the title. Of
viral nerd clout. Heck yeah, man.
No, dude, it's so crazy. I've had weird dreams like that too, where it's just like I wake up back in university and I'm like, I didn't fucking graduate or do any of the stuff that I thought I did before. Like, yeah. It's terrible. It's like, oh my God, like I missed everything again. No, but the growth of Art Blocks is something that, like, again, I think back to the whip where we brought you on and we had like that beta of squiggles and people could like play around and like see the different iterations that they could potentially scoop when the project goes live. Fast forward to now and it's just like, wow, like we were just fucking around in the sandbox, right? Like you just kind of put it out there in the world and like, okay, this is algorithmic generative art. This is something that I've been super passionate about. I have a bunch of buddies that have some great projects that they're going to launch in the curated project section. And again, like how crazy is it that like the niche of niches within the art world, not just like digital art, but like it's crazy that it's hit. And now you're seeing people appreciate the beauty that's possible through this art form, right? Of programmatic generative art. And now they're putting it all over their backgrounds on Twitter. I'm in that camp as well. I scooped the Fidenza spiral and I'm just like, oh my God, this is like my prized possession at this point.
Yeah, and Fidenza spiral. Heck yeah.
And to see people just appreciate and value and like love this art is just, again, it's been mind-blowing over the past 6 months to see people appreciate digital art in that way, and just to see that same love and energy and passion spread to the projects that you're putting on Art Blocks is just, again, it just makes my heart melt all over again. It makes me so excited for what's possible heading forward, because I still think that we're just scratching the surface of what's possible in the different artists, right?
I think we are scratching the surface. And I mean, I really and genuinely appreciate what you just said. Like as a, you know, crypto degenerate for the last 4 years, like in the CryptoPunks Discord and, you know, kind of watching people come and go, I do think that I've sensed genuine emotion from people who have otherwise simply participated in DeFi, for example, and just, you know, in it for the cash. And that's okay. Like, I really don't have ill feelings for people that are here to make some money. I mean, that's okay. You know, that's part of the excitement. That's part of the beauty of decentralized economies. But I think one of the most rewarding parts of this process is that I see people, I genuinely believe that we've introduced people to art appreciation, possibly for the first time in their lives, depending on what part of their age they're in. I mean, they might have even appreciated art as, you know, it's like, oh, that's the thing that you sell at galleries. But, you know, some of the ways that some of the people speak about their pieces in the channels make me realize, like, I think that, yeah, they might still flip it. Like, it's crypto, but I think they actually do get emotionally attached to the work. And I think that's what art is about. It's to create a bond, to create an emotional attachment, to create a conversation with yourself and with others when you look at it. And we've somehow managed to achieve that. Not that it wasn't achieved before, and there's other amazing art communities in the NFT space and beyond, but I think we've achieved it in a new way, a way that hasn't existed before in terms of community, in terms of sharing. And to be honest, it's not something I planned for. I can't say that, oh yeah, man, I wanted to come out with art blocks so that we could have, you know, 1,000 people discussing their generative mints, you know, back and forth and create. Yeah, no idea that the artist channels inside of the art blocks Discord would be some of the busiest channels, each individual channel just having their own loyal collectors, their own discussions, their own nerd out sessions. That was definitely not part of the plan. That's definitely a byproduct. But what I've learned is that might be one of the most powerful things about art blocks and generative minting just in general, is that you're creating these communities that their bond is, it's just like a Top Shot community. That the bond is this collectible, but unlike Top Shot, where, you know, the bond is also, man, maybe I saw this basketball player played it at this game, or I was at a game where he had a buzzer beater or something like that. That's your emotional connection. And that's great for sports enthusiasts. I'm a baseball enthusiast, so I can definitely get behind that. But in the art world, obviously, that's meant more to have an emotional connection with your pieces. And I think what we're seeing as massive amounts of collectors talk about the same piece in their own way and what they received and the emotional attachment to art, it's just different. I think it's different. I think it's part of the growth. We have a lot of people that join the Discord and they're like, oh, this is my first NFT. That to me is another, you know, beautiful achievement. But also they join the channels and all of a sudden a week later, they're like having active discussions about why the singularity that they have speaks to them in such a profound way. So yeah, it's crazy. I think that's one of the most important things is we're seeing people appreciate art, maybe less likely to flip, maybe less likely to sell. Even in the real art world, people buy real art and they eventually sell it. I'm actually listening to this book called The $12 Billion Stuffed Shark. I can't even like express more how much everybody should listen to that book and kind of get a sense for what's happening in this space. It actually creates some crazy validation for what's happening in this space, like how we are attributing $2,000 to a chromie squiggle and people are tattooing them on their bodies. Like we had somebody tattoo a chromie squiggle on their body yesterday. Cam W, big shout out. I mean, I was like when I first saw it, I was kind of terrified because I was like, oh my God, like that is permanent, just like the blockchain is permanent. Like this is like permanent. But then I was also, of course, super flattered and really excited. Also, it was an incredible tattoo. I mean, I don't know much about tattoos, but I didn't realize you could make a gradient out of a tattoo like that. But yeah, this what's happening with the squiggle and with some of these specific art pieces. I'm rambling. Check out $12 million stuffed shark and get a little bit of insight as to kind of where this kind of drive for pricing and like status is coming from. It's really insightful.
Dude, so when we had you back on the podcast, like back in January, I feel like generative art in its like conceptual form was still like very new. There, at least like new to a lot of people's radars. There are like a few other projects out there that were doing, experiments with generative art, but I feel like art blocks specifically like really put that whole concept on the map. And again, like not trying to talk trash, but there are a ton of generative projects out there that are like, I don't want to say like without intention, but like certainly not with the same level of intention that Art Blocks is. And there's a space for those projects. Again, you'll find a lot of them in my wallet as well. I'm not saying anything about anything other than I do feel like there is a significant distinction between what you're doing that's called like randomly generated art and what a lot of people now know as randomly generated art. And wondering if you wouldn't mind, like, sort of making the distinction in terms of like what you guys are doing and some of like the randomly generated stuff that, a lot of people are putting out there now.
Yeah. I mean, there's a lot of things going on. So, a lot of introspect is happening in my mind. And one of the things that I've really kind of come down to the idea of is that the concept of minting your piece. So, there's a lot of conversations in the channel of like, oh man, it's so much more fun to mint your piece than to buy it on the secondary market. And it's true. I mean, obviously we're having these crazy gas wars and it's, making me stay up all night trying to think about solutions. But if you mint a piece, not only does that give you like a more kind of participatory experience in minting the piece directly. And so therefore you feel like you own it and it belongs to you in a different way. But it also, because of that experience, opens you to what's on the secondary market. And there's something a little bit different about then buying something on the secondary market after you mint your own piece, because you minted your piece, you got excited about it, you were presented with it. Nothing is ugly, hopefully, coming out of Art Blocks. And there's a really good example of a piece where somebody minted it was a Libertad Parametrizada, which is a piece by Z. George. And it was like these weird colors of pink and orange on top of each other. And the guy that minted it was like, "Ugh, this is awful." And I was like, that is such a cool color combination. I wanted it really bad. So I traded with him. It's just really interesting. Like you mint and then you see what's on the market and you see what you didn't get to mint. And so then you feel like you can add to your collection. And I'm not saying that if you don't ever mint Art Blocks, you're missing out on like the entire thing. I mean, the art is still beautiful. It's really fun to collect it. But yeah, the idea that you mint your own work, I think is significant to the entire enjoyment, to the entire participatory process. Also, I think the curation, I think, is important, right? We have in the curated section, which the bar keeps getting set higher and higher and higher. We have now worked with, I can probably say some of the best generative artists in the world. Not like a handful. I mean, most of them. I think that there may be, just as someone that's been following generative art for a really long time, there's maybe 5 out of hundreds of the generative artists in this world that I would want to be on the platform. Maybe there's 5 that haven't launched and 3 of them are in the pipeline. And so we've established kind of in this movement of generative art. And keep in mind that generative art has existed forever. It's just, it was never called generative art. It was just art. And which leads me to another thing. Somebody asked me the other day, like what makes a piece of generative art good? And to me, the answer is if you can drop the word generative and it's still art, then it's a good piece of generative art. But that's as an aside. These artists are just like putting out this top-notch stuff, and it's blowing people's minds. The variation is blowing people's minds, and so like they can keep coming back and know that what's coming out is going to, because the curation board is becoming like insanely strict. I mean, literally incredible artworks are not going into the curated section of Art Blocks, which says a lot for the factory projects because they're amazing pieces of art. But like you can come back and you can know that this bar is going to have to be set higher because we have more demand, because we don't want to see repetition of similar concepts, because we want to just always encourage people to kind of push and innovate. And so that kind of gives a secondary, confidence level in anything that's an Art Blocks piece, right? Versus,
can you double click into that curated board and how that's structured and how that review process goes on?
Oh my gosh, I
feel like that's such an important piece of what makes Art Blocks tick, that when you had talked about and touched on it previously, I was like, wow, I can't believe I've never heard any other project or platform or marketplace really employ something like this. So yeah, would love to have you unpack that.
Yeah. Well, and I'm going to say one more thing about the previous topic, which is just the final thing of the fact that if you have a standalone project, those standalone projects can be totally amazing, and they live in their own little smart contract. And, obviously OpenSea is a huge marketplace for these things. And so they have their own storefront on OpenSea, and they have their own rankings on OpenSea, but we live in a very ADD community. So a lot of the reasons I think that Artblocks also is kind of having a little bit more success, which is actually just a complete byproduct, is the fact that our collections are kept together, that, the total sales of all of these together, because they're in the same storefront, keep them in the top lists, which keeps them on people's radars. And that's, I think, maybe the biggest differentiator between some of the other generative avatar projects that are out there. It's like, they're amazing. Look at Bored Ape Art Club. Awesome project. They way more sales than Artblocks, way more traction than Artblocks. And it's just a matter of, can they sustain that level of excitement and intensity as more and more projects come down the pipeline between Artblocks and other projects. So that third component, I think, is kind of super important, and something that we kind of stumbled into that's kind of given us a little bit more traction and success. Regarding the curation board, yeah. So, part of the reason that the curation board exists is because, as much as I like generative art, I am not an art history person. I mean, I don't have a background in art. I just have been tinkering with code for a really long time. And I didn't feel like I could do the platform justice by being the one that made the decisions as to what got on the platform or not. Also, as my wife and also my dear friend, Pixel Pete, which is very active in the community, both of them will be very quick to tell you that I love everything, that I just get excited about everything. And eventually they're like, hey dude, like, you can't, like, you're never going to say no to anything. And then finally, I want to be able to maintain a totally transparent relationship with the artists, and be able to not be someone that they feel like they have to convince or talk into. Like, I literally just want to have the same conversations with artists now that I was having before Artblocks could potentially generate, $100,000 in income for them in a few minutes. And so we created the curation board to allow me to kind of step aside. I don't vote on the curation board. I supervise the going on of the curation board, mainly because I want to see what the projects are that are coming through. And now we are up to like 24 members of the curation board, and they're people that come from all walks of life. They're NFT collectors. They are generative art gallerists. They're generative art artists. They're finance people, investors in Artblocks. Dan from OpenSea is someone that I don't think has missed a single curation round, right? I mean, because you have to understand, a lot of these people are super busy. And so, we get a smorgasbord of the curators, but we don't get all of them on every vote. People that literally are so deeply ingrained with the NFT space or the generative art space or finance are voting what makes sense for Artblocks. And in this case, what makes sense for Artblocks is not necessarily what makes sense for the artist. It's what makes sense for the artist, the collector, and the platform, all three of them combined. And I think that's really important to consider. It'd be really awesome to be able to do, for example, like Nifty Gateway does open editions. It would be so awesome and such a relief to be able to do that, because it would take some of the pressure off of like what's best for the platform or what's best for the collector or the artist, except for a generative artist can't, especially if something's curated, especially if something has like deep love and work put into it, you can't leave the edition number open-ended, because that piece is usually created to have a specific number of editions of variation. If you create it for 200 editions and you get 10,000, then you're going to get a bunch of repetition, and some of that excitement is going to be lost from that algorithm. So when I say that, the curators are there to kind of create what's best for the platform, it's what's best to elevate everybody that's involved in the platform, to protect the collectors so that they don't have to buy a new curated drop like every single day, if that could be, can even be possible given the new constraints that we're putting on the curated artists, is to protect the artists so that they're not forced to create an algorithm that doesn't fit within, an edition size that fits within their algorithm, is to protect the platform so that we're not putting out a 200 edition drop as a curated drop that's going to cause a huge gas spike in the Ethereum marketplace, which obviously we're causing that and feel really guilty about that. And we're working through solutions for that anyways. But that's happening in the factory drops these days. So at some point, we're kind of struggling with that. But that's what the curators are for. they're amazing. Their comments are so awesome. And if you could read some of the back end comments of like what they say, it's, you can see their internal struggles with saying this is an amazing piece, but it has very similar features to this other piece. And so, we need to encourage artists to like see the existing catalog of art blocks curated and design and develop against that. Take that as a challenge to kind of design and develop against that. And the last thing I'd say on that regard is that originally most artists that deployed on art blocks were established generative artists that already had algorithms that they adapted to work with art blocks. And that's great because these algorithms are usually like they're kind of cornerstone algorithms that they've been using their whole life or building the whole generative life. Now that they've deployed them, we're seeing artists develop algorithms specific to art blocks, specifically to appeal to bigger mint edition sizes, or based on the reactions to Fidenza, people might see like what people are excited about in terms of variation. And an artist that's really conscious of what's happening can absorb all of that and actually create a piece, use their expertise, their technical proficiency in coding, their artistic abilities to create something that actually suits the platform as a whole. Not from a corporate, like art block needs to make money. I mean, the platform, because when something is successful on the platform, everybody involved is successful, including the artists and including the collectors.
Dude, that is one of the things that I've noticed about art blocks, and I feel like we're seeing a lot of that now with some of like a lot of the really early projects taking off on the secondary market and everything. Dude, one of the things that I personally, and I'm sure you, is that's really cool about art blocks is I feel like a lot of these artists and creators have used it, sort of as a form for experimentation of like the intersection of like art and, algorithms and algorithmic art, or, however you would generative, all the terms. Dude, so from your perspective, man, you've sort of had a bird's eye view of all of this. Without choosing favorites, can you like point out a few creators who have taken this in like really interesting directions or used it as a way to do, interesting experiments either with art, technology, or the combination of the two?
Ooh, yeah, asking me to pick my children here. I'd say, okay, so first of all,
just your favorite children, not the rest of them.
Yeah. I think that artists that have utilized the platform for charitable donations are at the top of my list there. I mean, obviously, I'm a huge nerd for the art, and so that's a whole other conversation, and that would put me in a position where I'd have to pick favorites, right? But I think that the outside world is so terrified about blockchain as this black market tool for buying drugs, and there's all this speculation, and everyone's looking at the price of Ethereum going up and down, and Bitcoin, and it's like there's such a vibe there that sometimes it's really hard for the outside world to see some of the most like genuinely positive use cases, not positive for charity. We'll talk about that in a second. I just mean positive changes in what blockchain technology can bring to the table that can facilitate things that just cannot happen in the normal world under normal conditions without insane amounts of effort. So one, to highlight kind of what you're talking about, like there are artists that are setting, some of them a small percentage, some of them half of the value of every mint that goes to charity. And what's mind-blowing here is that the collector is the one making the charitable contribution. I mean, obviously the artist is too, but the artist might be kind of inflating the price a little bit because they know that the collector wants that piece. And so they're kind of encouraging the collector to make a donation to charity. It's happening at the time of mint. It's being split by our smart contract. It's going directly into that charity's account. We're also kind of starting to work with organizations like Offsetra so that we might be able to kind of have an artist set the secondary beneficiary go directly to like carbon offsetting, whatever. To me, that is a way that I can explain what blockchain does to people that are outside the blockchain space that makes sense to them. Like that literally I can get through to them and say, this is why blockchain is so amazing. You can't do this transparently in the outside world. Oh yeah, half of my sales go to charity. They go to my bank account. It's like, did you take half of them and give them to charity? Did you say, oh man, I had a bad month, so now I'm only going to do 30%? Like, I don't know. You want to trust charities. You want to trust, the people that are saying they're going to do stuff charitably. Whereas with the blockchain, it's like instantly you can see that money went into that charitable organization's account. And to me, that's taking blockchain technology and generative art generative minting, 101 of X up to a totally different level. So that's one thing that I think is really great. Also, we have a project that'll launch in the next couple of weeks. That's a video game. It's a very simple kind of like paddle pong video game, but it's gorgeous. It's beautiful. It's 3D objects. You hit the object, it disappears. You eventually have to get the ball to hit something in the middle. I think there's a beautiful market for that in the future, where it's like, I've been pitching forever for someone to make like a putt-putt golf course where, you mint 1,000 courses. Some of them, the ball actually can't physically get into the hole because it was just generatively created that way. So maybe that's like a dud, but those duds are kind of cool in their own way because they're not winnable, or maybe someone's going to spend hours trying to figure out a way to make it win and you can get it. Some of them are going to be a straight shot. Some of them are going to be really fun to play on. And so,
somebody make this.
On layer 2, you can get people that would collect 18 of those and create like a layer 2 golf game where golfers come and they pay $20 and then they play all 18 holes and the scores are tabulated. And that golf course is now kind of like when you go out to the suburbs and there's a golf course, and that's a world-renowned golf course because that golf, you can get people curating these golf courses, these putt-putt holes into these full-on golf courses that become these entities. Like that to me is something that is going to be really important in the future of generative minting overall, and hopefully Art Blocks will kind of be an innovator in that space. We're having a lot of conversations with game studios with that regard. So this first kind of game on the blockchain, super excited about that. It's like, it's pushing boundaries. We had a piece that dropped, I think it was after our last call. So something I just really want to draw attention to. There's a piece called 720 Minutes by Alexis Andre. It's a clock. It listens to your system time. So it still is very decentralized in the sense that it's not like making external calls to some API. It literally is his art, his vision, his like aesthetic built into this super abstract clock that ticks every second. And then 1 minute of the day, this is why it's called 720 minutes. 1 minute of the day is programmed to kind of have this like extra psychedelic response. And so when you collect these pieces, you have like your minute. And I know a lot of people, for example, that have talked about, like for example, for me, I haven't found it yet, but I've been seeking like 459, right? Like right before I leave work, I'd like to have this piece up in my wall, and it just kind of, it's like an alarm, but it's like a visual alarm that goes off. So that's a huge innovation to me. I'd go out on a limb and say 60% of the people that own that piece don't even know that it's a clock. So obviously our messaging could be better. But yeah, that kind of innovation I think is really that's where, when you mentioned earlier, we're just scratching the surface. Like we're really just scratching the surface. We're going to take stuff like that to a totally different level, and we're excited to see what the community, how the community reacts.
Well, shit, dude, my mind is blown.
Yeah, Jesus Christ, like games, like generative games.
That's a great answer.
Wow. One of the things that you started to talk about at the beginning of that answer was how we can kind of make blockchain and the crypto space and NFTs seem like less of a black hole to people that are not deep down the rabbit hole with us. Using the charitable contribution angle definitely is an eye-opener to folks. But I think that just sort of what you were talking about even before that, how like with a project like Art Blocks, there are multiple winners, right? There's obviously the team behind it that's been building it out, supporting it. Obviously, you're at the center of that's winning when Art Blocks wins. There's the artists that are able to launch and, like you said, generate like 6 figures within minutes, sometimes seconds, right? Which is incredible. But then there's this third set of folks, the actual collectors, the users, the fans that are winning as well. And this is something that you really have not seen before at all, right? You've had these mega huge social networks where there's a lot of people on them. Some people have crazy huge followers, and very, very few people are able to monetize that on the user side, right? Normally it's just the actual project and the stake shareholders that are winning, and regular people are left out to dry. Now we're seeing like users as citizens of these spaces, right? Like this community angle, I think is really, really powerful. And for a project like Art Blocks that you said like started off obviously 0 to nothing, or 0 to 1 rather. Now it's grown to 7,000 plus folks just within the Discord at least. I'm wondering if you can kind of not talk to me about how it's grown up into this point, but how you see that community scaling and continuing to grow and continuing to think about how empowering them will kind of impact the future trajectory of art blocks and how it evolves. I'm curious about that.
You're gonna see some really interesting branches, I think, in the community, and I think that's what kind of enables a community to grow. Is that if you have a community that literally is all in the same channel, it's all doing the same thing. I mean, that's amazing, and you can get a lot of excitement, and you can all talk about stuff. But it's the fact that it kind of has the ability to branch out in a lot of different directions, and individuals can take ownership of certain branches of the community, or individuals can participate more actively and kind of be known as like the people that are kind of managing that part of the community. So for example, something that was part of the idea of art blocks, and actually this was formulated, I think subconsciously for the most part, up until I joined Top Shot and kind of became like a obsessive, like literally OCD collector, right? Like I had to have not just one, but multiples of every single set. And they had to be nice, clean sets. And I had to have one of every one. And, it just got, I mean, it was obsessive. And I feel like to a degree, obviously that paid off, but also maybe it shows that I'm a little bit too obsessive about stuff, but that's okay. Cause it normally doesn't pay off to be that obsessive. But that kind of collectability is something that I've kind of gently promoted and kind of gently hinted at over the last few months. I'm one that is terrified of instilling FOMO into my community. And I'm very conscious of how things I say will impact a lot of people at one time. It's actually also very terrifying how much influence one word can have. And so, I'm very careful with that. We're very careful not to like suggest people buy stuff other than because they love it, because I think that ultimately that should be the goal. But collecting is something that I've kind of gently prodded at. I gently kind of demonstrated by creating some crazy collections early on, some of them that cost a lot of money because I had to spend a lot of money on mints and on the secondary market to show these collections. And recently, we've had a couple people in our community. One of them is Westophalopoulos, if I said that right, and another one is D. Bachman. And we have a bunch of others, but like these two specifically, where they've carved a niche into their own way of collecting and curating pieces. And that niche has inspired other people. So it's one thing if we're kind of gently nudging at it. It's another where one of our collectors, D. Bachman, has created an on-cyber gallery of only monochrome art blocks mints. And if you see what art blocks produces, you know that it's probably less than 1% of anything that comes out of our entire smart contract is monochrome. And, first it was like this cute set of 3, and it was like, oh man, that's cool. Cause this piece is very colorful. And all of a sudden, like you have this cute set of 3 monochrome and you're like, huh, interesting. As someone that loves color, like, you would think, oh man, like that's the opposite of what I like. But instead it was inspiring to see that. And now you can walk through a gallery of his, and I don't want to exaggerate. Maybe there's 25, maybe there's 50 pieces. I'm sorry if that's grossly overestimating it, of all these pieces that he's now collected that are just monochrome black and white art blocks pieces out of an otherwise very colorful collection. And when he shared that with me and with the community, it blew my mind, right? Like, it's, this is one approach to collecting, and he has now carved that out himself. And that doesn't mean nobody else can collect monochrome. Eventually there's maybe not enough monochrome for everybody to have a monochrome collection, but I think he's inspired me and other people that, oh, this is a really cool way of collecting. Our collector West created the first Paper Armada set that included all of the different ship types in the same color, and then put them all together in this way where it's not just like, all of them lined up on a wall, but kind of sandwiched them all together to kind of create this look of an armada with the same colors and the same ship and all the different ship types. And it blew my mind as well. So that has inspired a whole crazy community, just people creating armadas. It's inspired Chetal Golid, which is the artist of the piece, to create a kind of supplementary plugin algorithm where you can read your armada piece, and then you can remove the background and you can change the orientation. So now what people are doing is they're getting all their armadas, they're changing the orientation, removing the background, and actually assembling them into armadas and creating these really beautiful pieces where they have one armada facing off with another armada. This is the power of generative minting. This is the power of one of X, right? Like we coined that kind of expression because I love one of one art. Of course, I could never afford it before, but I love it. But like, you can't have this community based on one of one, but you can have this community based on one of X. It's very expensive. It's a very high barrier of entry to get into this, just mainly because you can either, spend $30 on lunch, or you can spend $30 on transaction fees to mint a piece on Art Blocks. And we're very keenly aware of that and working on a lot of different directions and solutions to make minting more accessible in L2s and other blockchains and all that stuff. But yeah, that, to me, that branch and that branching of community is where we're going to go. You're going to have that, like I mentioned, that golf course community. You're going to have people that collect because they want to create physical installations, and then people are going to visit those physical installations. We have a project on Art Blocks set up by a gallery called Bright Moments Gallery in LA, and the only way you can mint their Art Blocks project is you have to visit Bright Moments Gallery, and they only do 10 per day. And if you visit the actual space, they'll give you the BRT token, which is what's required to mint the piece. And so that's creating all sorts of FOMO with people. They're like, oh my gosh, like I want my crypto Venetian, but also it's really establishing a sense of community within their community of people that own crypto Venetians, because there's only 100 and so of them out there, and it's a very exclusive club to have a crypto Venetian. So that's another community. I don't think we even know the other 98% of communities that are going to arise from this, but that's where we're headed. We're headed towards multiple branches that kind of culminate in the same tree trunk, which is we are incredibly strict with the art that we put on the platform. It has to be resolution agnostic. It has to look good on a 24K television in 10 years without any kind of resolution degradation. It has to be deterministic. It has to look the same every single time you open it. It can only have one external dependency, and that we're incredibly strict on as well. Like those kinds of things kind of lead all of these different branches to one central brand identity of Art Blocks. And that brand identity is not one that's meant to be a luxury brand identity like, ooh, I have an Art Blocks. It's meant to be a technical brand identity that says, I own this thing that is stored immutably on this other thing. And while there's no guarantees that in 100 years I'll be able to see it, if anything from our current internet today is viewable in 100 years, this is likely going to be one of them. And that, I think, is inspiring a whole new community. It's inspiring a whole new sense of ownership and a whole new sense of comfort with art. And as you see some of these high value pieces kind of skyrocket in value, Ringers has just been this standout piece that it goes, just like everything else in crypto, it goes through cycles, but it maintains this price point where, man, I think owning a Ringers in 10 years is going to be equivalent to owning some of these really major blue chip artist pieces in 10 years. Because it's so significant and it's so thoughtful of an algorithm, et cetera. And so that's going to create its own other community, just like people that get together that own Ferraris on Saturday mornings to have breakfast. I genuinely think in a few years, you're going to have Ringers meetups in cities where it might only be 20 people in that city that have a Ringers, and they're going to get together and kind of just talk about not Ringers at that point. Hopefully they've already talked through everything that they need to talk about, but just that's what brings them together. And that's what kind of inspires the other conversations that they're going to have, whether they're about Art Blocks or traditional art or Ferraris, who whatever. So I don't know if I kind of rambled a little bit too much, but that's where I think we are headed with community, not just in Art Blocks, but in crypto in general. I encourage other communities to really feel that energy that happens when people have individuality in their community. You have your own username, and Punks has proven that people really enjoy in displaying individual avatars, and so have all the other avatar projects. And when you can have an emotional connection to a piece of art or multiple pieces of art, and they're yours and they're unique, and somebody can see that one and say, oh, that's Eric's art. Because there's certain Art Blocks mints that I've done that have been so special or unique that people remember when they were minted, and when they see it, they're like, oh yeah, that one's Snowfro. That is something that will help encourage community building in any world. And I think that we can, explore generative minting for communities across the board like that.
Dude, I'm right there with you. Yeah, what a fucking amazing answer. On the curation front, that's something that I've been super stoked on. I think that it's so incredibly powerful for people that are not in to the scene yet to see these curated collections, because then it's almost like this uh light switch moment where they're like, I get it. Like, that's fucking beautiful. It's just like they have their own experience with someone else's curated collection, and then they want to get a part of it, and they just want to join that club, and they want to get a piece of whether it's Ringers or Fidenza or any of the other like stellar projects that have been listed, right? And that sort of more specific collector club that forms around that, I totally see that as the future. I mean, you already see that and have seen that with the punks, right? With now Bored Ape yacht clubs. And I mean, if you really go back in the history of the metaverse and you reread Snow Crash by Neil Stephenson, look at some of these enclaves, it's just like, well, I can imagine that enclave being the fucking punks one. And then this is the Bored Apes. And then this is Ringers, right? I mean, it's almost been foretold in a really interesting way. I just want to like flag how amazing that answer is, especially from a community perspective.
Yeah, this is the most exciting part. I mean, besides, waking up to 45 direct messages and feeling compelled to answer them all, which I guess eventually will have to not happen, unfortunately. Like, I don't need, it's like, I do feel like, my involvement in the community is a big part of this, because I make myself available, and I'm very worried that eventually there'll be a time where I just can't be as available. And to me, that's like the biggest cringe so far for Art Blocks, is how much I used to answer every artist question. I used to answer every question on Tech Talk. And yeah, that's why we've brought on amazing people on our team to kind of help manage those questions. But that I feel, a little bit of a heartache, losing some of that direct involvement. But at the same time, it's as a result of, all this other crazy stuff that we're pursuing and enjoying. So yeah.
Dude, I'm curious to hear your perspective, man. I feel like, one of your great strengths has been, being able to sort of be ahead of the curve and see the path forward. And you've already given us some great examples today of like, projects that haven't been done yet, but you can see that this is definitely going to happen. It's definitely going to be a thing, especially just like Matt was saying, talking about the communities, meetups. I figured like, with the rate at which crypto moves, like, how far away are we really from these things? And I guess my, rhetorical question answer is not that far. And so if you look at Art Blocks and the role they play in this development, and we're looking like farther out from that, like zooming way out, like how does Art Blocks sort of navigate the crypto space moving forward as these communities continue to branch out? I mean, does it just continue to grow and become this like algorithmic generative hub, or how far down the line have you thought, or is this just one of these things where things have just ramped up and you just got to be ready to adapt on the fly and sort of let the path carve itself type of thing?
Well, we've had to adapt already. We have a lot of interest in what we're doing at Art Blocks that is not necessarily art, and it's not necessarily artistic, right? So like I mentioned, we're talking to some game studios, and we're talking to apparel companies that, really think that there can be this kind of community in their own community, or they can generate communities based on kind of this concept. And so, we also want to be very careful to preserve the art on Art Blocks, right? So like if, Taco Bell wanted to create a Art Blocks NFT, like, do we want to see that next to a Fidenza? And obviously the answer is no, not just from our perspective, but also like for the artist, right? Like we want to make Art Blocks art forward and keep it art forward. So what happens when you have, we're currently in talks with about 8 different organizations from all over the world, all walks of life, like not just art, that want to explore what we are putting on the table for their own communities and for their own branding and their own product. And so what we've created, we've had to kind of shift and create this whole separate, almost kind of like an enterprise version of Art Blocks. And the idea here is that, people, it's for the same reason that like, I don't think we can only have curated projects. Like any artist that's created something algorithmic that functions and is secure and is not just like a copy of someone else should be allowed to deploy on art blocks, whether it's in the curated or on the playground or on factory. Similar to that is because art blocks, before all of this other crazy stuff happened, was just intended to allow people to use blockchain technology for a pure, simple use of creating provenance and generative outcomes. And so we kind of struggled internally. It's like, well, are we going to work with? We're not working with Taco Bell, by the way. I'm just using that as an example because they did create an NFT on Rarible that looked pretty delicious, actually, if you ask me. But the idea is that, similarly, like, do we just say no to people that are intrigued by what we're doing and think that it could be valuable to their community? And so to us, we really kind of had to do some deep thinking. And the answer is no. Like, we are being validated here. Like, this has nothing, most people that know me at this point, I think, understand that I'm not driven by money. And this is really just like the most fun I've ever had in my life. And it's just really weird to think, man, not only am I getting validated on this crazy idea of generative minting for art, but also on the idea that others would be interested in generative minting for different products. And so saying no to that seems just completely unreasonable. So we've created this, what we're kind of for now calling powered by art blocks concept, which is essentially like an infrastructure for other platforms, whether they're crypto platforms or whether they're real world platforms, to use our infrastructure completely separate from like the art blocks art platform and create their own little communities. So we deploy the art block smart contract for them with like different rules, different minters for different situations. We can offer them everything from like an iframeable minting flow so that they don't have to have like Web3 developers to, if they just want to manage their entire Web3 interactions, they can do that as well. But the idea is that people are finding value in what we've created and they want to bring that to the table in their communities. And it has been really fun to watch that kind of develop and play out. So that's where I think we're headed right now when we're separating a little bit from, what the art portion of the platform is. It really kind of is other than like, these gas wars and this minting issues, which is something that desperately needs to be addressed, unfortunately is cyclical. And so, we had these issues in March and then all of a sudden, things calmed down. And so we didn't have to worry so much about like the gas wars, and now they're coming back. And so now everyone's yelling again, and who knows, it could just keep growing. And so these are only going to get worse, or it could settle back again. And that cyclical really kind of keeps me awake at night. But the idea is that, Art Blocks has kind of set up this curated art front, and it works pretty well. Like, everything's kind of moving pretty smoothly there. And now we want to kind of, in the meantime, while we preserve this as like our holy grail of generative art, where I'm talking to celebrities every day, these artists, which I consider celebrities and like, people that I've been following forever. Now we can kind of allow other people to use our technology with their own branding. And so, you'll see, hopefully in the next 2 or 3 months, you'll see projects pop up with like tiny little words at the bottom. They're going to say powered by Art Blocks. And basically what that's meant to do is to say to the user that might know about Art Blocks, like, this person is creating something with the same strict standards for generative deterministic outputs and outcomes as we do on our art forward gem of a platform, like our baby, our flagship, like our, and so if we are willing to use this technology for Fidenza and preserve Fidenza in the way that it deserves to be preserved using this immutable technology, then other people using it for their purposes makes a lot of sense too. And I'll give you one quick example without naming names. It's like, there's galleries out there that are actually representing generative art in real life, like that have been doing it for years and been very successful about it. And they're actually well known in the crypto space. And it's like those gallerists have their own arsenal of artists, and gallerists don't necessarily, produce 0.1 ETH art. These are artists that are producing, before Art Blocks existed, the cheapest piece on the market would be 3 ETH or 4 ETH. Excuse me. And so we're creating kind of this idea of a powered by Art Blocks contract for like a gallery that wants to do an edition of 20 for 2 ETH, which is more along the lines of like the traditional art world's price models for that level of art. Like, if we have blue chip artists and then we have blue chip generative artists, and eventually we should be able to drop the word generative there again, and they should be blue chip too, right? But like in the world of generative art, we have like the blue chip generative artists, and those artists should be enabled, should be allowed. For example, the way Dimitri was able to do his playground drop of the Eternal Pump, and it was 2 ETH for an addition of 50, like that should have a home as well. So being able to create a secondary smart contract for a gallery that brands it as their gallery, that just says powered by Art Blocks, to prove that the technology is the proven technology that we've used here on our side, is really important to me to kind of enable people to do that. And along those lines, it's like I mentioned, we're talking to game studios. Like we don't want people, I'm freaking nerding out at the idea of someone minting a generative sword for a video game, but I don't know that I want that in Art Blocks, right? Like Art Blocks is art, and we want to keep that as like the art side. So if a platform, if a game studio all of a sudden shifted all of their storefronts to generative minting, so you kind of mint your power and your color and whatever, all of a sudden those game companies have like a catalog of all of their items that are immediately tradable on OpenSea, which is beautiful. And then on top of that, immutable and kind of stored in the same way off server that, you know, we love in the NFT space. I think we shouldn't shun that. I think we should pursue that. So that's where we're headed with Art Blocks now. And even with all of that, which I think is pretty innovative, and I think we're going to have a lot of fun with it. I still genuinely think we are only scratching the surface. Like it's becoming more clear where people can appreciate what we're doing. But I oftentimes refer to, like, when I describe where I think we are in Art Blocks, and I hope this doesn't sound like we're in limbo or something in terms of like where we're going. But, you know, I downloaded Instagram because I wanted cool filters for my phone. I didn't download Instagram because I thought it was going to be like the place where I store my memories for the rest of my life. And I put like my family photo albums, and that it was going to become this multi-billion-dollar company. I literally downloaded like cute, like, cause I was, you know, I'm into photography and I had a camera phone early on, and I was like, oh man, this is cool. I can add sepia to my phone. And then Instagram blew up into something completely different that I don't even think they thought that it was going to be. And so I feel like Art Blocks is in a spot similar to that. I mean, who knows where things are going to go, but I still think that we're learning. We're 7 months in. I still think we're in like the filters on Instagram phase to imminently or eventually discover how this is actually going to play out in the real 7 billion people on the planet world, not just in our crypto community, not just in the overall art community, not just in the gaming community, but in like the entire, you know, world's desire for individuality. And so yeah, that's our vision at the moment.
Yeah, well said, dude. Dude, you're a great visionary, man, and it's awesome to hear it, like, you know, directly from your mouth. You know what the vision and the plans are, and it's hard, you know, as you know, to navigate such a rapidly changing landscape, and you've done it quite successfully, man. So, dude, so you've been here before, man, and you know one of the things we love to do is rifle through people's crypto wallets and see what they've been collecting in, you know, projects and things that are totally unrelated to theirs. So if we were to take a peek, man, have you had time to accumulate any other random things over the past 6 months or so since we saw you last?
I haven't had a lot of time. I do feel FOMO of I am missing out on a lot of stuff. You know, I was so active in the Punks Discord. I mean, I was there every single day, and I still am. I just don't talk because sometimes when I mention, like, I talk, it just turns into a very long conversation. It's really shitty if I'm just going to come in and say, hey guys, what's going on? And then like leave. Right. So I definitely try to carve out the time when I know I can just chill and hang out with all the punk heads, because it's what got me to where I am. And it's like my favorite part of crypto. Right. But I do follow that chat, and that is definitely ground zero for everything that's happened in the last 6 months. And I feel FOMO that I haven't bought into all the stuff that's not all of it. I mean, all of it, a lot of it you can tell is clearly like speculatory and hype. But there's one project there's actually 2 projects that have stood out. One of them is a project called Crypto Climates. And it's a project by a really cool lady named Megan that basically just created these little kind of chunks of I'm trying to see if I can find some so I can tell them to you by name, but it's not going to happen on the by slowing you down here. But she just creates these like, you know, little cute little climates that are meant to show, you know, little parts of the planet, little tiny ecosystems meant with a sustainable approach. She donates money to climate change. She donates money to all sorts of stuff. And I just think I don't know, like I'm always terrified of like actually mentioning projects because I worry about how much of an impact that can make. But I think that she's created something that has genuinely stood out to me as something special in the crypto space from her contributions to the community. And you can tell because she hand makes each one. She usually sells them very quickly and she has a waiting list of people wanting to buy them. So that's one that I think is just like super special. And another one, let's see if I can kind of find something real quick that I think is, I'm kind of going through here. I'm kind of confused how OpenSea is showing collections now. Oh, here we go. So we have a member of our Discord in our Discord. His name is CS Jammy. He's someone that actually I've come to find out is a rock star in the world of art, in the world of like, you know, Marfa. And he created a collection called Bad Cash, which is just these kind of crumpled up little worlds. They're on OpenSea as well. And he really has created something that stood out to me a lot. Because he's a collector at Art Blocks that kind of is obviously like interested in what we're doing. And so, you know, he uses that to kind of inspire, I think, a little bit of his work and me, because I think he has a really beautiful way of creating these 3D sculptures. And that's it. I mean, that's probably the only two, actually one more I'll just say, because these are literally the only three things I've bought in the last 6 months. Lauren Bednar, which is another member of our community, has created some really beautiful things on OpenSea as well, with algorithms that can't work with art blocks because they take like full minutes to render. And so I think between the three of them, like that's literally the only purchases that I've made in the crypto space, other than buying art blocks pieces, like to the point of breaking my Ethereum wallet. Yeah, that's it. Sorry, I was a little bit not so prepared to give you a nice rundown there.
I love it, man. Shakedown, man. We try to catch people off guard.
Yeah, it's a great question to filter out folks, whether they're really in it, which obviously you've been in it for years and years and years, versus other folks that are just coming in trying to capitalize on the moment. It's still super surprising how folks are just unprepared for that very simple question.
It's also frightening how answering that question can cause significant, interest in the collection. So that's also the fear too, right? Is that, as you grow in the space, like, there's a bigger chance that someone's going to make a purchasing decision based on that. And if you listen to the $12 million stuffed shark, which I was just like literally the segment I was listening to in the car on the way to work today, it really kind of talks on that subject, on how, you can inspire someone to buy something because you think it's cool. And it's cool because it kind of validates that people think you might have a good eye for art and a good eye for design, but it's also scary at the same time. So yeah.
100%. No, yeah. Especially as folks look to personalities and individuals like yourself. And I don't want to use like the influencer word, but I feel like we definitely, they do carry outsized influence at this point. Yeah, you definitely need to wield that properly.
Yeah, it's terrifying.
Or you become like a shill and you just pump and dump and all that good stuff, and that's just terrible. I mean, personally, that would be terrible. When I agree. About my reputation. Yeah. But dude, Snowfro, every time I chat with you, I swear to God, like I just walk away with like a whole new way of looking at things. Again, there's so many nuggets of wisdom that you dropped, talking about what's happening currently, especially like your vision for the future, that just has me tripping out. I just tweeted out, just like you use the word or the expression thoughtful algorithm. I'm like, oh my God, it's such a beautiful expression. And it just beautifully encapsulates.
It already replaced Nerd Cloud. I dropped that in the beginning and it was all good until thoughtful algorithm got dropped.
No. Nerd Cloud's in the title, man. We already solidified that.
Oh, all right, cool.
Gosh, that's gonna be the craziest title ever. I'm actually, I feel like I need to print that and like frame it in
thoughtful
my house.
Algorithms in Nerd Cloud.
We need to tokenize your titles here.
Yeah, but Snowfro, man, I just want to thank you for doing everything that you're doing, for creating art blocks, and for helping to really cultivate this amazingly beautiful community that you've built up of artists and collectors and just goodness in the space. It really is a bright light. And for everyone, make sure you check out Art Blocks and artblocks.io. Follow Snowfro on Twitter. I think it's Art on Blockchain. Is that right?
That's right.
Yeah. Do all the good things, and Snowfro, man, just keep on creating, brother.
Guys, what y'all bring to the table is amazing. I'm super genuinely lucky to get to talk to you guys, and thank you very much for having me again. It's crazy. I can't even imagine if we do this again one day. Like what's gonna look like. So yeah, thank you, and thank you to everybody out there, the collectors,
6
the
months
artists.
to process everything you said in this.
Right. But yeah, no, thanks collectors, artists, like, supporters of the platform. I wake up every day very, very validated and rewarded. And this is the best time I've ever had in my life. So I'm really genuinely grateful for that. Thanks, everybody.
Hey, everyone. Hope you enjoyed the show. Just want to give a quick message from this month's sponsor, Crypto Motors. On July 29th, Crypto Motors, the world's first digital automaker powered by the Ethereum network, will launch the Gen 1 Neon Roadster drop, which includes 150 unique NFT production series cars with 5 original striking colors. The last launch sold out in minutes, so make sure you are quick to secure a Neon Roadster of your own. They will be available for purchase on OpenSea and distributed in 3 batches. Batch number 1 launches July 29th at 11:30 a.m. Eastern. Batch number 2 launches the next day on July 30th, 11:30 a.m. Eastern. And batch number 3 launches July 31st at 11:30 a.m. Eastern. Be on the lookout for ultra rare hidden units that are virtual racer neon roadster models featuring a unique design, color, and other trait attributes. More details about the drop, available units, hidden units, and colors can also be found on Crypto Motors Medium page. And you can also follow the drop and join the Crypto Motors community via Discord. Look out for those links in the show notes, and see everyone next episode.